All right. My question is, how does integral psychotherapy differ from holistic
Right.
or integrative medicine? Because you see a lot of that out there right now. And then the other part of that is a lot of us we're practitioners in the upper left. But how do you, as a person who is a specialist in the upper left, get or work with a client and start to embrace or pull in the other quadrants? You know, or are we just, I think you mentioned it once, you're kind of like a general practitioner.
Yeah.
So how do you know, what does integral psychotherapy look like? I mean, are we just like a case manager for their life, or, you know, or are we a pimp for them, or, you know, something like, you know what I mean? So like, what does integral psychotherapist look like, or in practice?
Right. Well, that's the great adventure we're all embarked on to find out, and that's what's so exciting. Now, I can tell you sort of where we are at this point, but again, as I said, this is the opening, you know, sentence, not the last sentence of the book. And there are a couple of things about that. First, let me just briefly say the difference between holistic, integrative, and integral is holistic was certainly a move to try to include a lot of these things. But what's tended to happen, and I don't really mean any judgments about this, it's just pioneering efforts are pioneering efforts, and they sort of, you know, do some things very well and some things not too well, is that it tended to simply take it that anything that's not conventional has to be included. And so it would get into some very pre-rational stuff and calling that trans-rational, and, you know, it's just, I mean, well-intentioned, great first start, but not very well respected as a result of that. And so it's something we generally try to stay away from in terms of a term. A lot of what it was interested in is still important, but we have to completely sort of reframe it and package it much more carefully, and then also use our own discriminating wisdom and intelligence in terms of what we embrace as effective therapeutic techniques. There is some pretty, I remember Abe Maslow's great line about Fritz Perls. Now, Fritz had some wonderfully important stuff, and I'm a big fan of his, but he also tended, you know, he was a pioneer and he could get pretty goofy. And Abe Maslow dropped in at Esalen, one of these, when Fritz Perls was at one of his more outrageous therapeutic moments, dragging himself across the floor and grabbed Maslow's legs. And Abe looked down and says, "This begins to look like pathology." And so a little discriminating intelligence now, you know, but it was a badge of honor at the beginning, and I totally understand that, which is that, you know, orthodox conventional therapy had so excluded so much stuff that anytime we found something else, yes, we're going to use it, you know. And so the therapist wearing, you know, the little pyramid hats and the crystals, and, okay, I see you have some pyramid hats. Okay, I'll use something else. But that was, you know, everything kind of got tossed in the bag, and now we're sort of backing off and looking at them and saying, okay, let's just be a little bit more careful about it. Integrative is a move that I think is wonderful, but still tends to operate, in this case, a little bit more on the other side of the street, which is a little bit more secular. So you find integrative medicine or integrative psychotherapy, and usually there's not a whole lot of deep understanding about transpersonal spiritual components. Although, again, I think it's a very healthy move, very much like positive psychology is a very healthy move. Integral is specifically the one for us. We really almost now use that to mean all quadrants, all levels, all lines, and so on, because it's the only model I think that is ready to take it to the next stage. So like I say, it's not the final model, but I think it's the first one that we can comfortably call holistic or integral or whatever all those old words are, we're trying to do. So what's the relation, and how can you relate to it? And that's, again, that's why I want this. I hope this becomes a ongoing dialogical community about how people are sharing what they're doing in terms of case studies and their own practice and what works and what doesn't. And there's any number of ways to go. Remember, the fact that there are all these therapeutic modalities available doesn't mean that you have to do them all, or master them all. And the general practitioner that you mentioned is exactly a pretty good model, and it's one that I actually started talking about. Earliest I remember is, I think I wrote a small thing on it in 1983, that I thought this was a really good model. And the model was based roughly on what a family physician or general practitioner or GP does in medicine, which is that they are trained to know most of the main problems that their patients are going to have. But if there are tons of specialties that they can't do, but that they can recognize that this person might need it. So a general practitioner can't do brain surgery, and they can't do laboratory stuff, and they can't even do psychiatry. But if they find somebody who has a problem, they can say, look, go see this specialist, and go see this specialist, and so on. So what we hope for somebody who's doing integral psychotherapy, and there are even family therapists that can be doing that. So, but we'll just say a one-on-one office integral psychotherapist. A GP there means that whatever your particular type of technique that you enjoy and that you're good at, you'll use those, because you're in a sense a specialist in those. Now you might be a specialist in shikantaza meditation, or you might be a specialist in EMDR, or you might be a specialist even using something like psychosynthesis, or you might use Gestalt, or you might use cognitive therapy, and so on. Whatever your toolkit is, then you go ahead and keep using those. But you're integrally informed, and you're aware that this person really seems like they could use their Christian background. They really seem like they could use some contemplative deepening. I'm going to recommend they go to Father Thomas Keating and take up centering prayer. You can just refer them there, and then you become, in that sense, yes, the coordinator of the other types of practices that they're doing. And I think that's a very important part of what an integral therapist can do. Now again, you have to gauge the degree of interest of your client. Some of them don't want to do all of that. And so that's fine. They come in, they want brief therapy, interpersonal stuff, a 10-week contract, that's fine. HMO will support that. Decontaminate all the terms, slot it into the insurance form, and do the very best you can to help them with their specific presenting complaint. But others want more than that. They want a little bit of self-understanding. They want to know, why do I keep doing the same stupid thing over and over again without getting paid for it? They could get paid for it, they could be therapists, So you gauge that and work with them on that. But I think that's in conjunction then with integral transformative practice. I think that's really where we're going to find a new breakthrough in kinds of therapeutic work. And we see this already starting even with conventional medicine. Any MD, any conventional physician in here knows that if they have a client who's smart, graduate college degree, and you do a diagnosis and tell them they've got Parkinson's or something like that, 48 hours later, they're going to know as much or more than you do about that illness. They will be up 48 hours on the net. They will find everything that's going on. They'll know the leading edge treatment on that. And they're going to be back in the office the next week going, you've seen these 3 papers, haven't you, about the new treatment on L-dope? And you're going to go, oh, well, sure. I know. So we're trying to, for very smart, savvy, leading edge physicians, and that certainly includes healing professionals of all sorts, a working partnership with people that want to do this kind of thing is going to be one of the major ways forward that the healing profession is going to be moving. And that would mean, for example, that if and you don't have to do this, I'm just saying some of you will want to do this, and I think this could be very, very exciting, is that you can form a partnership with a client who wants to, first of all, deal with certain psychotherapeutic problems, so-called illnesses or symptoms, but they also want to get engaged in a growth process that might also involve meditative process or something like that. And you can coordinate, you can help be the coordinator of that for them. So they can go to the Integral Transformative Practice site. They might end up studying centering prayer with Father Thomas, Big Mind Process with Genpo Roshi. They might go study with Andrew Cohen. They might go do Vipassana. They might do a Kabbalah retreat with Rabbi Zalman. They might end up going to Spirit Rock and doing Vipassana, etc. And then they might combine that with a Mike Murphy, George Leonard, ITP thing at Esalen. For you to just check back in with them and help coordinate that is going to be an ongoing, very, very valuable role that I think therapists can move into. And it's a hybrid thing. It's sort of, you know, a personal trainer and a life coach, but somebody who's also particularly attuned to the ways we can lie to ourselves when we do these things. And you can define emotional problems in many, many ways, but the simplest definition of the shadow is that component of the human psyche that lies to you about yourself. And that's what you're trained especially to spot, and by the way, that's what none of those other people are trained to spot. And so you go to a meditation teacher and they're not going to spot that, and you go to ITP and they're not going to spot that. That's your job in particular, is to keep an eye on the shadow. And 9 out of 10 problems in the spiritual communities in this country happen because neither the spiritual teachers nor their students are keeping an eye on the shadow. And it will bite you in the ass every single time. So I think that's going to be a really exciting area for therapists that want to make that a part of their practice.